I love sport bikes, and if you're watching this channel, you probably do too. There's something undeniably special about these bikes. Even if you've never owned one yourself, there's a gravity that pulls these machines towards us. Today, we're going to explore that feeling to try to understand why, for so many riders, sport bikes represent the absolute pinnacle of what motorcycling can be. And I do think I'm the right person to lead this discussion. My riding career is rooted in an undying attraction to sport bikes. In the last decade, I've ridden dozens of them on street and on track, and I've even competed in club level racing. So think of this episode as an unapologetic love letter to sport bikes, not in the sense of blind adoration, but an honest exploration of what makes these things so intoxicating, so addictive, and so seemingly meaningful, despite all the very real drawbacks that come with them. This is Sport Bikes through the eyes of a sport bike rider. Let's get into it. To understand why sport bikes resonate with us the way that they do, you have to understand what they fundamentally represent. They offer the purest form of automotive sport the world has ever seen. Motorcycles in general result in a level of performance that cars simply cannot match without insane prices and engineering feats. And if you compare them to sport bikes specifically, the gap between cars and motorcycles becomes comically large. The combination of otherworldly power-to-weight ratios, razor-sharp handling, and unthinkable lean angles make motorcycle riding feel unlike anything else on the planet. Sport bikes aren't just fast, they're direct and honest. There is no insulation, no body panels, no steering wheel. When you're on a sport bike, opening the throttle as you exit a corner, it feels like you're not just adding power, but like you've hardwired your nervous system with a super crazy adrenaline release switch. And that's part of that sport bike secret sauce, baby. Cars, even incredibly fast ones, often feel like they're hiding their speed behind comfort and stability. And honestly, as a guy who's driven tons of hypercars and supercars, they're boring compared to sport bikes. I mean, they just don't do anything for me. A sport bike does the opposite. It puts you right in the center of action. You feel every sensation and input with your entire body. The engine churning beneath you, the front end compressing, the tires smearing on the asphalt on exit. It's raw and it's visceral. You got your helmet out in the wind, you're leaning the bike over, you can physically see the tarmac underneath you swirling by. It is incredible and nothing compares. And sport bikes are the ultimate distillation of this experience. Even if it sounds a bit corny, sport bikes represent the optimal synergy of man and machine. More so than fast cars, more so than any other style of motorcycle. I mean, think about it this way. A bike weighs about 400 pounds in a proper sport bike configuration. Rider and gear, let's call it 200. So you're literally half the weight of this thing going down the road. It truly is a beautiful synergy. Another reason sport bikes feel so special is because they're not shaped by consumer demands or value propositions. They're shaped by competition. Not just free market competition like Coke and Pepsi, but literal high-stakes competition on the international racing stage. MotoGP, World Superbike, and World Supersport are not just entertainment. They are laboratories and proving grounds for engineering excellence. They're a place where a manufacturer will spend millions of dollars just to shave fractions of a second off a lap time. The modern sport bike is what it is because of this pursuit of competition and racing performance. It's because Ducati wanted to beat Honda, and because Yamaha wanted to beat Ducati, and because Aprilia wanted to prove that they're more than just the other Italian company. When all these manufacturers operate at the highest degrees of performance, they're operating at their best. They're spending massive R&D costs to be marginally faster. It's just a testament to passion and excellence. And while that might seem a little counterintuitive to the value-driven motorcycle buyer today, it represents the pure art of motorcycle manufacturing. Investing in excellence and hoping that the costs are recouped somewhere down the line. And because racing fuels innovation, we ultimately get really awesome sport bikes. Cruisers or other lifestyle sort of motorcycles don't live in that same ecosystem. Their products evolve slowly and they only provide an illusion of value, not because they're trying to win a racing competition. Comparatively, sport bikes receive technology that stems from MotoGP, and then it comes to production bikes to be homologated for World Superbike, and then it ends up in your garage. quick shifters, 6-axis IMUs, ride-by-wire, winglets, semi-active suspension, they all exist because somebody somewhere needed an edge in racing. Sport bike riders directly benefit from all that lineage, and honestly, all of motorcycling benefits from this lineage. Do you ever wonder why your KTM 390 has a quick shifter? It's because 20 years ago, somebody wanted to go faster on a racetrack. Even if a vast majority of riders never go to a racetrack, they know that they're riding a machine built by engineers whose entire job was to chase perfection. It gives a motorcycle an aura of seriousness, of purpose, and excellence that you just don't find in other categories. For many sport bike riders, that connection to racing isn't just a feature, it is the core identity of being a sport bike guy. Part of the identity of a sport bike rider also comes from the reality that riding a motorcycle well is a specialized skill. Riding a motorcycle requires way more concentration and effort than just driving a car, but riding a sport bike, as its designers intended, becomes a discipline unto itself. You don't simply hop on a Panigale V4 and automatically understand trail braking, body position, or how to back it into a corner. And truthfully, you're gonna be scared shitless the first time you jump on a 200 horsepower machine and take it out to a track. These skills have to be learned, practiced, polished, and sometimes painfully relearned after crashing. Riders spend years perfecting their techniques, often progressing through track days, racing schools, and even making it to club level competition. That pursuit, the ongoing challenge, is deeply satisfying. Sport bike riders are often driven by real self-improvement. They want to see progress, not just in lap times or lean angles, but how smooth and effortless it begins to feel even as their riding is getting faster and more aggressive. You're gonna build up endurance as a sport bike rider. You're gonna notice as you get your elbow across the paint, smear that tire when you drive out of an apex, that your lap times are getting faster and faster with ease, and you're riding better and better. And unlike cars where nearly anyone can hop into a fast vehicle and experience a pretty large portion of its capability with basically no technique, sport bikes demand commitment. They require respect, patience, and finesse because they ask so much of you. They give something back that few machines can. That sense of exclusivity is part of why sport bike riders love their machines so fiercely. Of course, after all that romanticizing of skill and engineering excellence, it's also important to acknowledge the far simpler truth. Our monkey brains just like them. They're irresistible because they look, sound, and feel unlike anything else on the road. You don't need to write a dissertation to understand why someone falls in love with a Panigale V4R or a BMW M1000RR. For many riders, the attraction is simply magnetic. Manufacturers pour enormous amounts of effort into these bikes. They are the crown jewels of their lineups, truly halo machine, flagship motorcycles. They carry the brand's identity. The combination of function and aesthetics have resulted in some of the most iconic sport bikes ever known to man. The Ducati 916, the Honda Fireblade, the Yamaha R1, the Kawasaki H2, the old Honda NR750s, I mean, take your pick, right? These machines are what you think of when you think of a manufacturer at their very best, the tip of the spear. The purpose-driven bodywork, the dramatic silhouettes, the aluminum frames, everything in the design evokes speed, precision, and purpose. A sport bike engine hits a primal nerve as well. High revving inline four, screaming V4s, every configuration has its own character and its own way of eliciting a cocktail of feel-good hormones in your brain. If you've ever heard a V4 at 15 grand or a cross-plane R1 engine echoing off a tunnel wall, you know exactly what I mean. And imagine being the pilot in control of such power. You rev it out, you watch the needle swing all the way to 15,000 RPM while this thing is literally strapped between your knees. It doesn't get any better than that. You don't have to be too romantic about it or think of it as some sort of spiritual man and machine bonding experience. The primitive part of our brains like loud engines, going fast and living life on two wheels at the edge of life and death. And sport bikes are pretty much the perfect tool for the job. If you've been thinking about becoming a member on yammynoob.co, now is the best time to do it. We've started new Discord-only micro giveaways. Every other week, I'm gonna be giving away to someone on Discord some tires, gloves, helmets, jackets, boots, anything I can think of that would help them on their motorcycle ride. If you're interested in winning consistent fun prizes, head over to yammynoob.co and become a member today. Of course, the best prize of all is winning a giveaway motorcycle. December 26th is the very last day you have to get in to win this bike. So, Head over to the website, become a member, and join and have some fun on the server. Now let's get back to the show. I touched on this a bit earlier, but it's worth diving a little bit deeper. Another totally undeniable part of the sport bike experience is the connection to racing history. For riders who follow MotoGP, World Superbike, Moto America, or even their local club racing scene, sport bikes are a core fixture of the greater story. They're the tangible link between the everyday enthusiast and the heroes they look up to. There is almost something surreal about the fact that a rider can see a race on Sunday, can see a V4R, an M1000RR, or even an R1M being piloted by a career racer, let's say in the World Superbike, and then they walk into a dealership the next day and see a motorcycle that is shockingly similar to the one on track. Now, obviously, there's a lot of differences. The World Superbike spec machines are built to a crazy standard, but in no other motorsport discipline does that gap between a true competition machine and a consumer machine shrink to such a narrow margin. It's why if you've ever seen footage of a professional rider utilizing a stock motorcycle, you're like, holy crap, that thing can go really damn fast. And it's not just the hardware that is disseminated to the people. The techniques you learn as a track day rider or racer are the same fundamental principles that professional racers use. Sure, you might not be a 1 in a million Spanish GP rider, but riding at pace on track feels like a much more honest connection to the professional experience compared to other forms of recreation. By comparison, playing two-hand touch football in the backyard is substantially further removed from the NFL. Or consider taking, your Miata on track versus driving an F1 car. The gap between these things is not that big. When you ride a sport bike, especially a high-end flagship machine with racing roots, you feel like you've stepped into a lineage that includes Rossi, Stoner, Marquez, Toprak, Rea, Quartararo, and countless others. If you're just cruising a back road, the DNA of those machines influences your experience. Sport bikes are a bridge between fandom and participation, and I think that's a big part of why so many riders are attached to them. I mean, consider this. Go to your average F1 race and look at all the yahoos wearing stupid merch and walking around with their little pot bellies, having never touched a competition machine in their life. Then go to MotoGP and see a bunch of grizzled old farts that you know for a fact were club racing back in the 90s. That's the difference, baby. Motorcycles are hardcore. But now we're at the moment in the video where we must take a look in the mirror, because sport bike riders are not immune to delusion either. For all the excellence and heritage and mechanical brilliance we've talked about, the reality is many sport bike riders rarely, if ever, actually use their machines as intended. It's not too dissimilar from other categories of motorcycling. Maybe all of motorcycling is a mass delusion. You're not taking your ADV across the desert. You're not using your Goldwing to commute from California to New York. Many sport bike riders will never take these bikes to the track. Many of them will just use their bike to go to a bike night, flex on their buddies on the highway, or maybe, just maybe hit some fun twisties on the weekend. And on the street, fully fared leader bikes and even 600s often feel pointless. The power is overkill or inaccessible at the top end of the rev range. The ergonomics are brutal, and the chassis geometry is designed for speeds you will not reasonably reach in public. So what do? You justify, explain, and perform mental gymnastics to convince yourself and others that being a sport bike guy is awesome, that the ergonomics aren't that bad, the heat is manageable if you just keep it moving, and the insurance cost is actually worth it because you can't put a price on passion. We must admit that the love of sport bikes is not purely logical. If it were, nobody would ride them. It's an emotional choice, and emotional choices rarely hold up to rational scrutiny. That doesn't make them wrong, it just means sport bike riders follow a different hierarchy of needs when they choose a bike. They're willing to accept discomfort, inconvenience, and impracticality because the highs are worth it. The experience is one of a kind, and the machine offers you a level of connection you just can't find anywhere else. It's antithetical, but the pointlessness of a sport bike is part of the charm. There are bikes that are more comfortable, cheaper, more easy to ride, and maybe even offer 80% of the performance with far less inconveniences. But for sport bike evangelists, nothing else will do. And not everything needs to make sense to be meaningful. Oftentimes, grizzled sport bike riders will have something fun for the street and something ridiculous for the racetrack. Think of a 210 V4 for your garage and a Panigale V4 for the track. But really, if you want that final bleeding edge of performance, you gotta go fully fared and you gotta go 1000 cc's. I think if you're gonna be a sport bike guy, you might as well get the top dog and use it the way it was intended. Ultimately, the entire conversation circles back to taste. Sport bikes are not the best motorcycle for every rider, not even for the vast majority of riders. The best motorcycle doesn't even exist, as we've mentioned here on this channel many times. It depends on what you value the most. Do you want a lot of power, comfort, style, affordability, the ability to go off-road? Do you want a balance of all these things? Sport bike riders value performance, precision, sensation, and identity. Even if they've never thought about it that hard. That's their taste, and taste doesn't require justification, it just simply is. It emerges from within. You can ride a sport bike without pretending it's practical. You can love it even though it may try to kill you mid-corner. You can choose to ride one while being fully aware that it is not the most ideal machine for basically all scenarios. But if the sound speaks to you, the look, the connection to racing, the sense of purpose, then the choice is obvious. Sport bikes represent a unique intersection of engineering brilliance, athletic capability, and artistic expression. Even when they don't fit neatly into most people's daily lives, they have carved out a meaningful space in the industry that no other machine can match. To me, sport bikes equals motorcycling, and it always will. The thrill, the emotional appeal, and even the irrationality of sport bikes all add up to something that is far more than the sum of its parts. Despite the inconveniences, there is no shortage of people riding sport bikes and going to bat for their importance in the industry. We need those aspirational flagship machines that solidify brand identity and connect riders with the decades of racing pedigree. And if you can't handle that, well, then go have fun on your Ninja 650 and leave the real sport bikes to the rest of us. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end. If you're a sport bike enthusiast, let me know down below. I'm tired of kowtowing everybody in the audience. We like sport bikes here. We like going fast. It is what it is, baby. And something tells me we have a fair amount of that energy in the audience right now. Thanks again, guys. I will catch you in the next one.